The last section in Chapter 1 is on the coordinate plane. You may have used this in the past, but it's very important because this ties a lot into science, and anytime you have data, you need to know how to display it. And a specific type of way of doing this is using a scatter plot, which uses the coordinate plane, and we'll do an example like that later. But first, let's go over some vocabulary words that you should know and include in your math rules notebook for this section. The first is a coordinate plane, which is shown here on the right, is formed by the intersection of a horizontal line called the x-axis, so here in the red, and a vertical number line called the y-axis in blue. You should be familiar with these lines where at the very center we have 0, and then anything up is going to be positive, down is negative, to the right is positive, to the left is negative. The axes meet at a point called the origin and divide it into 4 quadrants. So here's our origin, this green dot in the center, and then we have our 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it goes counterclockwise. The 4 quadrants we'll use later to describe the position of a particular point. And then each point in the coordinate plane, so each one of these little intersections, is represented by an ordered pair, which always has the x position first, followed by the y. So for example, if we wanted to put a point at 3, -2, that means first on this x-axis here, we would go over 3 positions to the right because it's positive, and then down 2 positions for the y. So that would be our position. So we have our x position first, which moves horizontally, and then our y position, which moves vertically. So this is just reiterating. The first number is the x-coordinate, the second number is the y-coordinate, and a scatter plot uses a coordinate plane to display paired data. So we'll do an example of that towards the end of this lecture. So example 1 problems are how do we name points within a coordinate plane? So if you see these points here, how can we actually go about naming them? So for the first example, if you're doing point A, it's 3 units to the left and 2 units up. So the x-coordinate is -3, because this is our x-axis and this is our y-axis. So it's -3, and then the y-coordinate is +2. So it would be written as -3, 2. Press pause and try B and C on your own, and then I'll go through them. So point B is 5 units to the right. If you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's 2 units down. 1, 2. In the down direction, it's negative. So its coordinates are going to be 5, -2. And lastly, C is a tricky one because it is on. It hasn't moved anywhere on its x-axis. It's still at 0. It hasn't moved to the right or the left. So it's 0, and then it's moved 3 units down on the y-axis, so it's 0, -3. So try to label on your own for homework D, F, and E. Remember, when we're doing this, we're not looking at the letter, we're looking at the point that the letter is next to. That's where you're actually going to be reading. So example 2, let's do the opposite. What if they give you the numbers and the points? How can you put them onto the coordinate plane? So let's color code these. So let's say A is red. So it's at -2, 0. The first number is going to tell us where along the x-axis. So it's going to be to the left 2, 1, 2, and then the y is 0, so it's going to be right here. B, we're going to have to move 3 to the right because it's positive. 1, 2, 3, then down 2 because it's -2. 1, 2. and then C is going to be to the right 1 and up 2. And now that we see where these are located, we can describe their position. So A is actually on the x-axis. This is our x-axis. B is in quadrant 4 down here, and C is in quadrant 1 up here. Remember that they're counterclockwise, so we start with 1, 2, and they use Roman numerals, 3, and 4, and that's to describe the position. So use a piece of graph paper or draw your own coordinate plane and describe the location of each one of these points and plot them on a coordinate plane. So press pause now. So the last example is important when you're using data, and you'll use this in science a lot. So it's making a scatter plot. So the data below shows you the amount of water used after the given number of minutes in the shower, and they want you to make a scatter plot of this data. So basically you want to draw a big coordinate plane here, and it's important to remember to label your axes. So in this case, our x number is time, and our y-axis number is water. So here along the x-axis, we're going to plot time. So I've labeled some of the points, and then on the y-axis, I've labeled water in gallons and marked off every 10 on there. And then you can go ahead and treat this as if the first point is going to be 3, 7.5. And then you can plot it on your graph. So here at the 3, I went up to 7.5. And then the next one's going to be 6:15. So 6 up to halfway between 10 and 20 is 15. And you can go ahead and plot your data. And that makes a scatter plot. So we can see trends in the data. So for homework, describe any relationship you see in the scatter plot from example 3. So the relationship between the time and the water used when taking a shower, and bring that in tomorrow. Remember to include these examples in your math rules notebook.